welcome back. What's good, homies? Welcome back to the Drafts and Draughts podcast. I'm Joe, a.k.a. Sultan. This is Dave, a.k.a. Disaster. It's Tuesday, May 14th, and today we're doing our top 15-ish Dynasty running back rankings. We'll try to get through 20.
I thought you went by Salt. I've been calling you Salt. You go by Sultan.
Sultan, baby. Today's episode is brought to you by Cournoyer CPA. Dan specializes in U.S. individual and small business taxes as well as bookkeeping. If you're tired of doing your own taxes, doing your own tax returns, and you're frustrated with the services you've been getting, sign up for a free consultation with Dan today. The link will be in the show notes for you to click on and book a free 30-minute consultation with him. He can help with individual tax returns, retirement questions, credits, real estate taxes, you name it. You'll be in good hands. I've personally used Dan for the last 7 or 8 years for not only my own personal income taxes, but I used to be a small business owner, and he used to do all of our business taxes as well. The best part about Dan is he's always readily available, and you can always go to him with questions, and he's not going to get too annoyed. But that being said, let's jump right into it. Dave, I think we should jump straight to the draft review. Show me what you got. Tell me you got something good.
Well, after your friends said I wasn't creative enough, and last couple weeks I've had some Treehouse, some other stuff. Today we have Amen Corner.
Ooh, what is this? Explain that can to us, because that looks sharp.
Made for the Masters, triple hazy, all about golf.
9.4% alcohol. Am I reading that right?
9.4%.
Oh, chat. I'm already sorry if Dave passes out before we finish the RB rankings. I'm just throwing all mine up there.
I'll just be slurring my words. It's okay. Yeah, I got a nice review here. So
maybe I'll get some reasonable trades from you.
I'm gonna do a pre-crack just to keep it smooth and going.
All right, nice. I have the Lone Pine Summer Lights. It's Lone Pine Summer Nights. It's out of Portland, Maine. It's a citrus wheat ale. It's only 6.5% alcohol, so it's not going to be as hefty as yours. But 5.2% alcohol. I'm sorry. It's not going to be quite as hefty as yours. I'm going to be having the time of my life while you're going to be falling over. It's a good opportunity to try to get Christian McCaffrey on my team if I've ever seen one.
Sure.
Let's give you a live crack right now.
Cheers,
Dave.
Second time drinking it. It's from a local craft brewery here. It's probably one of the top 2 or 3, called Social Project. It's like a 4. It's okay. For such a heavy beer, it's actually pretty good. But I'm going to give it a 4. Flat on the dot.
You said it's a triple IPA? What the hell is that? What the hell is even that? Get a soundboard. Damn it. All right, so with the citrus sweet ale, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what I was just in a summery mood last time I was shopping. I got a bunch of shandies and lemonades and sweet drinks, and this is kind of trash. Sorry, Lone Pine Brewing Co. I give this a 1.5 out of 5. I'm probably not even gonna finish this whole beer. I'm gonna pour in a glass. Maybe it'll change the earthiness or the notes that I get. But for those of you keeping score at home, this has got to be the lowest rated beer we've had on the show so far. Unless I don't know what you gave.
Didn't you give one like a 0.5 or something?
No, I would never do that. I'm not that cold. I don't know what you gave the Smirnoff Ice.
No, what was the one that you had that was terrible? The sour or something that was just awful.
I don't know, Dave. You're already shit-faced, I think. All right, let's move on to the OTQ. One tough question. What do you got for us today, Dave?
Okay, so something I've been looking at. I was talking to another manager about looking at the running back landscape right now. You have your old elites that have been there for a while. You have really a big gap. There's really not a lot of great running backs between the age of 25 and 27 or 28, like in that range. There just isn't any. And so there's like a 3-year gap, oddly, that there's no great running back. And then you have all these committee backs, plus like the Breece Halls, Jonathan Taylors, Josh Jacobs, a couple others are still in like that 22 to 25 range that are promising. How do you look at running backs now going forward if you're projecting where this old guard, they're going to start falling off every year? This new guard, you have a couple studs, but just in our league, we need 24 starters. So just at running back, how are you approaching that kind of going forward with either drafting, trading? Are you waiting for people to get older to go try to acquire? Are you taking that second contract risk with someone that's kind of proven it? Are you just trying to take a couple shots in the 3rd and 4th for people that turn out to be the Myles Gaskins, types that just shine for 1 year, James Robinsons, etc., that are great 1 year, then they go, and you just keep trying to repeat every year. And hopefully the years to hit that, you have good wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight end, etc. What's your thoughts for how you're going to build for the future in running backs?
Yeah, this is an awesome question, and obviously is super relevant to our discussion today, and something I had already written down to kind of talk about regarding this disconnect between old and young running backs is I admittedly have always been a fan of building this young, sexy Twitter team, the team that you post the screenshots of that doesn't win any championships, but who gives a shit? You got guys all under 25. And then I'm sitting here and I'm going, because, I'm not going to spoil anything, but Dave had a couple older running backs in his top 15, and I didn't even have them on my list. And it's like, man, what am I think I'm totally thinking about the position wrong in
It's
that
called
regard.
ageist. You're just ageist.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, so I like the idea of building a young running back room that you can have for the next 5 to 8 years. But newsflash, most running backs don't play for 5 to 8 seasons. Like, unless you're the absolute freak monster, like your Christian McCaffrey, your Derrick Henry, your Adrian Peterson, your probable Breece Hall, like your most running backs are probably 1 to 2 year rentals at most. Like, look at a guy like, I don't know, like Rachaad White. I know it's a good example. He didn't really play much his rookie year. He came out his sophomore year smashed. He has 2 more years left on his deal, and then he's going to be 27. It's like, how much more can you really be expecting out of a guy? Like, a lot of running backs that are coming in the league right now, a lot of the rookies you're going to see this year, your Ray Davises, your Isaac Guerendos, they're all 23-year-old rookies. Blake Corum's kind of older. He's 22 probably. Like, these guys are all going to be, when they finish their rookie contracts, they're going to already be over the hill, 26, 27 years old. So I think if NFL teams aren't willing to invest in running back anymore, why should we as a community? Like, why are we looking at running backs as an investment and not looking at them as just purely a stopgap, as a means to an end? Aside from like the top 5 to 7, I think you might be onto something in regards to just go get the guy you think is going to score the most points this year and stop worrying about if he's going to play the following year, because most running backs don't play the following year. Like, it's just so, look at Chuba Hubbard. He came on last year and now he got replaced by Jonathan Brooks, presumably. Like, I don't know. Kyron Williams came out of nowhere, had an awesome year, and then they draft Blake Corum. Like, of course he could still be a monster, but he could be getting, like, there's, unless you're the Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, like, your job security means nothing. Your age means almost nothing if you're not playing. Well, what do you think? Am I touching on some things that you're agreeing with? I saw you nodding a lot, which is very unlike you when I'm talking.
No. So it's, well, yeah, I was hoping you were. So I want you, what's your point? What are you doing?
Well, I still want young guys. Like, I just all about the young RBs.
So how are you acquiring them? Are you just drafting best available when it gets to your pick in the draft? If you need a running back, you're going to try to always have a couple of young guys and hope 50% hit. Or are you going to just try to buy the Breece Halls later on once that one good year, I'm going to go buy you because I know that you've proven that you're going to be a workhorse back and you're great.
I think, if I think there's an opportunity to get a young running back that to me has elite upside, then I will. If I could go get a Jonathan Taylor for cheap, quote unquote, like a first and a second, I would. If I could go get a guy like ETN for a first and a second, I would. If I could go get a guy like, A-Chain for a first and a second, I probably would. But if I'm having to pay more than that, it better be for Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, or I'm just going to pay a little bit less, spend one first, and go get an older, quote unquote, air quote, running back like Saquon, who is probably more of a sure thing for at least 1 or 2 more years, or Josh Jacobs for probably 2 more years, who they're 26, but you're spending less because they're older. And I think if I'm chasing running back, like if I didn't already have the running back room that I have just as a random player, I'm not ponying up for running back until maybe the first week of preseason. Like, that's enough, or the last week of preseason, I might be like, okay, I have every position I need. The running back I drafted in the second round didn't take over the starting, so I need a running back now. Maybe I'm going to go buy Joe Mixon. Maybe I'm going to go buy Dameon Pierce. Maybe I'm going to go buy Zach Moss.
Probably
like, that's what
Dameon Pierce, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If I couldn't think of off the top, but like some guy who's presumably like an RB2 caliber player, that I might go try to buy a guy like that for a pair of seconds, like, and try to fill out my running back room that way. I'm not chasing elite running backs unless I'm rich. If I got lucky or made savvy moves and I'm sitting on 4 or 5 future firsts and my team looks pretty good, you know what? Maybe I'll flip 2 firsts and try to go get Jahmyr Gibbs, or try to go get Christian McCaffrey, someone who I think is more more sure thing. Otherwise, I'm filling the stopgap with the guys that I think are cheaper and unsexy. Like if I can go get Alvin Kamara for a second, I'm doing it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. Is there's just so Alvin Kamara is another great one to throw in the top two, but there's the 4 or 5 guys that are in this upper echelon that have just been top 10 perennial, like amazing running backs for so long, and even coming up, there's really only 3 that I'd say are in there right now. 4 if you had Bijan, 5 probably with Jahmyr Gibbs, and so you have like 5 running backs right now that are probably going to play, like assuming health is there, they'll be a starting running back for the next until they're probably 27, 28 minimum is I guess my thing. Whereas there's so many others that are just not that way. So I don't know. I'm in the position right now where I have the old guys, I'm potentially they're going to compete the season, trade. I don't know. I'm in this weird flux situation, but as I'm also looking, I'm like, I just don't know how the fuck I'm going to get more running backs. And I'm in this weird thing where it was kind of a selfish question to figure out. I don't know. But at the same time, I know there's all these other running backs out there that are maybe in the back end that are not. And I probably should have compared to just for the show, but maybe for a future show is like, what is that gap? Because everyone talks about the gap is from like running back 1 to running back 12 and like how big that is, or CMC to others, whatever. But no one's really talked. I want to know like what's the gap between 24 and 32?
Like in points per game or value?
Yeah, points per game. Like
I got you. Yeah.
How many points am I losing to have running back 32 versus having running back 24, or versus having running back 24 to running back 14? Because if it's only a couple of points, but I can have elite receivers, tight ends, QBs, whatever else it is. All right, like that changes your whole mentality to it. So it's maybe some research I want to do, but I'm in your camp. I'm more looking now, I think, to see what I can get. Maybe try to look that 1 year ahead. Like last year, we kind of had rumblings that like what Samir Wright could do, but just try to grab some of those other rookies. It's just a hard thing in the league right now where
very hard.
People don't have good parity of value of knowing like, what's a CMC worth versus Derrick Henry worth versus a Kamara versus trying to think of, like Saquon. That those are all great. Getting to the older stages of their career, what are they all actually worth? They're all different is kind of the answer, but everyone kind of just thinks that it's their guy if they're worth a lot. So anyways, but yeah, kind of an interesting thing where it's the one position right now where I just don't know. There's so few that you can bank on, where in receivers, there's not that issue.
Yeah. I think like it's really hard to draft that next young running back that you think is going to take over a role. Like there are several running backs, like I'm just thinking of our rookie draft last year that all got drafted to murky situations. I know A-Chain was behind Mostert, and there was rumors of Dalvin Cook going there. There was Ty J. Spears going behind Derrick Henry. There was Condre Miller going behind Alvin Kamara, and Zach Charbonnet going behind Ken Walker. They're all regarded as very similar prospect profiles. They all went down day 2. And it was just kind of like you either swung and you hit a home run with A-Chain, or you swung and missed big time with Condre Miller, or you got a couple guys who showed they could do something in very limited touches, like Ty J. Spears and Charbonnet, but had no real any chance of taking over any large touch share from the running backs in front of them. And it's like the same thing you're probably seeing with this year's class is after Jonathan Brooks, it's a bunch of 3rd round running backs like Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, and I think that's it. And all those guys are in situations where they're currently behind a veteran. There's Benson's behind Connor, and Marshawn Lloyd's behind Josh Jacobs, and Blake Corum's behind Kyron Williams. And is one of them going to emerge as a stud? Is one of them? And then there's a bunch more 4th round running backs that got into similar situations that it's like you said, are you going to really try to throw your dart at the wall and hope you get the right one? Or are you just going to spend 2 of those darts and go buy Zach Moss and just be like, I'll get my running back for this year. And then if Zach Moss is gone next year, who gives a shit? I'll do the same thing next year. I think it's a viable strategy. I think if I was to pick an optimal one, I would really want to get one running back anchor if I could. Like if I had to overpay, if I had the 106 and I could pay 106 plus another first to move up to the 102 to go get Jahmyr Gibbs or go get Breece Hall in my rookie draft, the guy that's the clear, that's when I would probably spend. Because like rookie picks, 1st round picks still only hit like a 50% rate. So people acting like, why would I spend 2 firsts on a guy? It's like, you're just flipping 2 coins versus one more sure thing coin. Like sometimes you got to pay a little bit more to go get the guy at the top of the draft, like the Brees Hall, like the Jonathan Taylor, like the Clyde Edwards. Oh shit, Hilaire. Not Clyde Edwards, Hilaire. But that was a really good question, and I think that should take us into our dynasty running back rankings. Which, guys, you are in for a doozy because Dave and I have very, very different running back rankings. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. But let's go into our tier 1 rookie running back rankings. And I could have split this into 2 tiers, but I think just based on how unanimous we had all 3 of these guys in our top 3. I'm just going to go ahead and put, I got to share my screen. Let me present. Share screen. I have a new tier maker set up here. Oops. Share screen. There we go. I have a new tier maker that actually includes rookies. Thank God. I was able to rename some of the RB tiers. We have an elite tier, and then we have elite RB1 upside or safe RB1 floors is the second tier. And then we have a career fringe RB1s or young upside guys is our third tier. The next tier below that is RB2s or flex plays. And the next 2 tiers are needs an injury to be relevant and woof, which I don't even know if we're going to get to. But back to what I said. Let's start with the tier 1, which consists of 3 players that we both collectively had in our top 3s. That's Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. So Dave, you had Brees Hall 1. I had Bijan Robinson 1. Do you think there's a considerable difference between the 2 of them? Why would you have one over the other? Or is it just you had to put one on one and that's why you did it?
Yeah, I mean, Brees has done it. Bijan hasn't. So it was pretty easy for me actually to put Brees Hall clearly number 1. I actually almost put Jahmyr Gibbs 2. If Jahmyr Gibbs didn't have David Montgomery on his team, I would have put Jahmyr Gibbs 2. Just based off performance and just explosiveness that I've seen just watching the players. I think there's honestly even arguments you could have put Jonathan Taylor there too in that same kind of mixture.
Mm-hmm. He's close.
So I was kind of in that dynamic of just that's how I was thinking of it. But yeah, Brees to me is the clear alpha youthful running back that I would say 100% is going to have a job. I think all these three of these guys are going to have a job when they're 28. Yep. And yeah, so that's why I put Brees ahead.
Yeah, I think Brees is incredible. He has on like 80 receptions last year, and he's coming off an ACL surgery and still put up an RB3 overall season or RB2 or something insane. Like he's just a monster. I only had Bijan ahead of Brees because if they're that close and they're that productive, seemingly, I'm going to go and trust the NFL scouts and say 32 NFL teams passed on Brees Hall in his rookie draft, in his NFL draft, and Bijan Robinson didn't make it out of the top 10 picks. So Bijan went 8th overall. We haven't seen a running back go top 10 since Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette season. Like when Fournette, McCaffrey, and like every running back that's gone to the top 10 has most of the time been an absolute smash. I think it's Adrian Peterson. I think I said McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette. Like you rarely see a whiff. And I'm not saying Brees Hall could possibly whiff now. We've already seen 2 full years of him being elite, but that's the only reason I had Bijan literally 1 spot ahead. We both had them 1 and 2. And then we both had Jahmyr Gibbs 3. You kind of already touched on why you had him 3, but why'd you have him ahead of guys like JT and James Cook and all your next tier players? What do you think the big differentiation is for Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, just younger, still really good. I mean, I don't know. There's just
that's true. He is 3 years younger than everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that the like if there's any concern I have for him, actually was kind of like what's going to happen to Jared Goff, and that kind of got answered going into this. So
that's huge. What a good point.
So I think that to me, like their team on offense, I don't know. I think the next contract is Amon-Ra. It's going to come up in like a year.
He just got a contract extension. He's good.
Okay, so he's good. So yes, I mean like their team's good for the next 3 years. So like I don't know. That to me was kind of the reaffirmation that Jahmyr Gibbs probably isn't going anywhere. Like I'm curious if they decide to still bring in or maintain Montgomery. So I guess that's kind of a question mark. but again, this might just be the new dynamic in the NFL where they have this hard-nosed runner, playing on first and second downs, and they have kind of this pass catching electric back when they're down and on third downs.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly last year Gibbs could still dominate even with a limited role. So I think the upside there is only, running back one if he actually was to ever get the full load.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Jahmyr Gibbs exceeded expectations. I thought for sure initially after I saw the usage in game 1 and 2, I was like, this guy's fucked. Like they're just only going to use him as a scat back. They spent the 12th overall pick on a little satellite back. And then obviously Monty got hurt. He exploded for like 4 straight 25 plus point games. He was regarded as basically a top 5 pass catching college back ever. I think only like Christian McCaffrey was a higher rated receiving back than he was. And then I saw some really interesting stats the other day. I didn't save any stats down. I probably should have, but that was like, did you also know that during the second half of the season when Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery were both healthy, that they got it was like Montgomery got 17 carries inside the 5 and Jahmyr Gibbs got 16. Like they didn't use them as 2 different roles. They actually just rotated both backs. It was like,
so the only thing I remember from that time though was there was a lot of stuff where they were just switching on downs or switching on offensive possessions. Yeah. And like there was even things that they were talking about where
or series.
They were going to send Montgomery in, and they decided, and then Montgomery was like, no, let him play. It's fine. And so,
yeah, Dave was on the sidelines, guys.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing to kind of watch for.
I was just surprised to hear that stat. I don't know if I saw it on Twitter or I heard it on a podcast, but that, it would, if you were to just ask the average person, myself included, how do you think their roles transpired the full year? I would be like, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs is just out there pass catching and going in, between the 20s as a change of pace back. But through the whole second half of the season, like you said, they split full series. It would be Monty for 2 series, Gibbs for 2 series. If they were on the goal line, it didn't matter. If it was Gibbs series, it was Gibbs series. And then if they were on a pass catching situation, if it was Monty's series, he was out there for the reception. So it was almost like they really used it like a 2-headed monster rather than 2 different defined roles. So I think, like you said, if something would happen to Monty or he goes down, I think Gibbs has shown he can carry the load as a single lead feature back, and he was a between the tackles runner just like as much as an outside the box numbers runner. But anyways, I think going back to our OTQ, these are the 3 running backs that if you wanted to pay up for this early in the offseason, these are the guys you go do it for. I'm not spending up on a guy like Tony Pollard this early. I'm not spending up on a guy like Najee this early in the offseason. But if I had an opportunity to get one of these 3, that's when I'm like, okay, I would do that. Okay, let's move on to our next tier. This is a mini tier of elite running back 1 upside or safe RB1 guys we think will be RB1s at least for the next year, maybe 2. But if it's just 1 season, we think these are top 5 backs. Should be top 5 backs overall. And it's coming in our average rank of 5, but your 4th, my 6th ranked back was Jonathan Taylor. Followed by Travis Etienne. You had him at 7th. I had him at 5th. And then Christian McCaffrey, who you had at 6th and I had at 7th. So again, very, very clear. We had all these guys in that top 7 each. Why don't you talk to me a little bit why you had JT is at the top of this tier or inching close to that elite dynasty running back tier? You're muted.
Sorry. So just to be clear, I would have JT in the same tier as the prior 3. The only consideration I would say is age.
Yeah, but he's 2 years older than the oldest running back in that tier.
But it's still close enough to me where if I'm looking for a young, and I'm saying young, like 25 or younger, and that's where he is at 25, that I know is going to have a job,
he got the contract. Injuries,
he's the guy. He's one of the last ones I'm putting in there that's at that age that I'm 99% confident is going to be in there. So that's where to me personally, I'd have Jonathan Taylor in the elite. And then, so anyways, that's where I'm at on JT, just my personal view.
Yeah, I think JT is one of those guys who's done it before. He's been running back 1 overall once before. He's on an offense with a mobile quarterback, which is usually, from what I've heard on podcasts, I don't have the stats in front of me, but because of the fear of the RPO where you have to respect Richardson. You have to have a linebacker spy on Anthony Richardson at all times. It opens up lanes for a guy like JT. And I think he could be in for a monster season. And like you said, the only reason why I wouldn't have him in that top tier is he is 25, which means if you're buying him for that longevity, he's going to have that 28 next to his name very soon. And that's very soon, 3 years, which as you've experienced, Dave, as soon as a guy running back turns 27 or 28, he's old. I don't want him. So if I'm going to invest in a running back, it's probably those big three, but I would buy JT for the right price in the offseason. But that whole Colts offense could be a little murky. The next guy I wanted to go on to was Travis Etienne. I had him at running back 5. I just think he's such a fantastic rusher. I think 2 years ago, he led the league in was it EPA per rush or yards created per touch, some sort of NFL next gen stat they have on their website. And he was in a kind of a limited role with James Robinson, but he was basically the most efficient running back in the league, where it's like, yeah. And he was a former first round pick. He was in 2021. Obviously missed his whole rookie year with an injury. So not this past year, but last year was technically his rookie year. Had a very efficient rookie year with limited touches, and then came out last year and smashed. Of course, he had some way less efficiency, but that's what happens. The more carries you get, the less efficient you are. Just like the more reps you do on the bench, the less weight you can do because you get tired. As the season wore on and as he got more touches per game, his efficiency went down, but he showed he could be a 3-down bell cow running back. I think he finished running back 4 or 5 overall. And he's still only 25 years old, same age as Jonathan Taylor. I couldn't put him in that top tier just because he wasn't quite as efficient as them and is a couple years older. But I think there's no holes in his game. There's no real competition on that roster. I think Tank Bigsby is good, but clearly couldn't challenge him for touches last year. And I think they drafted another running back in the 5th.
Watch your mouth about Tank Bigsby.
Tank Bigsby single-handedly lost the Jaguars like 2 games. But yeah, so if you got nothing on ETN, why don't you talk a little bit about McCaffrey? I think he's the man who doesn't need any introduction, but
yeah, like it's the kind of long-term bullishness on him is like Mostert just had his career year at 32 or 31, whatever he is. I don't know. And so it's like, I don't know. I think I don't remember who the last Cliff person was that was elite into this stratosphere that fell off. Like, how old was Todd Gurley?
Well, he had knee injuries, I think.
Oh, okay. So
he had like chronic. He had the same thing that Ty J Spears has. He is like missing an ACL, and then just one day he literally just died. I would say probably Adrian Peterson, but he played till he was 31, 32. Henry, who's still playing till he's 30. LaDainian Tomlinson. LaDainian Tomlinson's a good one. He fell off when he went to the Jets.
What the point I was trying to make is like, how different is it today from what it was 5 to 8 years ago to what it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago?
That's so true.
From all the sciences and medicine,
modern medicine. Yeah. The rule changes.
Yeah. Dietitian, the rule changes, so many little things that can allow you to play longer. The other thing I was thinking about too is kind of with CMC. It's interesting about Henry, but Henry is just like, you look at the guy, he's just so freaking freakish, like just bulky everywhere. And so I wonder with people like him and then the CMC is not quite the same style, but CMC truly is a wide receiver out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Like he does do some running plays, but he's not a running back. Like that is not what makes CMC great on the field or fantasy wise, is because he's essentially a wide receiver that's labeled an RB in the backfield. And we see wide receivers a lot play till 30, and 30, 31 really is a cliff. But again, that's not elite guys, but we see the elite guys that can go to 31, 32, 33. And then like, that's where their cliff really starts to hit. Again, it's all different per player based on injuries and how elite they actually are and whatever, and how well they take care of their body. So I started thinking about a lot of those things, and I just wonder where his actually is. Right. And you also question things too, like of workload. He's had, maybe next to Henry, I don't know who's had more workload, but those two have just had stupid amount of carries or catches or attempts, we'll call them, throughout their career in the NFL. And so, yeah, that's just kind of where I sit on CMC. Like, it's so bizarre. All these amazing players that we're going to talk about between QBs, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and the first player that's been drafted first every year, aside of after the second year of injury, has been Christian McCaffrey. And
Yeah.
even so, he's 27. He's still going to be the number one drafted player off the board in almost every setup, other than maybe Superflex, where it will be a QB. And so I just think that that's just still so interesting to me for an older guy, because everyone else you're talking that's older, right? They're obviously not number one, but none of them. There's not really any older guys that are still even like top 5. Like even Devontae's probably something like 10 or 12 off the board. Like, so it's just crazy to me that he's getting in this
Tyreek's
age.
the only one.
Yes, Tyreek's a great example, actually, who's still in that kind of thing. So it's like just some of those guys. I just wonder, when is that going to hit? But CMC is such a weird dynamic where it's also not just like, hey, he's still really good. It's like, no, he's still being drafted first.
Right.
Of all the
he's not just
guys.
very good.
Yeah.
He's not in the same he's not in the same bucket as the guys that maybe we're going to talk about later, like the Henry, Kamara, who are still very good, but they're being drafted in the 3rd and 4th round of redraft, and like McCaffrey's still going 101 overall.
Crazy.
Yeah, I think you brought up some great points. The only thing is just, it's one of those things. It's like nobody wants to be stuck holding the potato at the end, the hot potato. But it's like he's the only one who I'd be okay with. Like, I just think, like you said, he's got such a, even if he does take a suffer on the ground and his efficiency goes down, he's so dynamic in the passing game that he's going to have a long career regardless. I think you're going to see him be on some team competing somewhere, even if he does not with the 49ers. It's very fun to watch. I'm excited to see how McCaffrey does this year. I had another thing to say about him. If it comes back to me, I'll bring it up. But all right, this is where we're going to get into some players we agree on a little less, which I think is a little bit more fun to talk about. The first one here is going to be our running back 7, I think. Yeah, running back 7. You had him as your 5th overall running back. I had him as my 12th. So, James Cook, Buffalo Bills running back. Talk to me a little bit about what made you have him ahead of a guy like McCaffrey, ahead of a guy like ETN, especially this high, because I had him at 12. So we definitely don't see eye to eye on him. And there's something that you might be seeing that I'm not thinking about, or vice versa. Maybe you're not thinking about something that you should be, that I could bring up. But
no, him. I'm gonna not to lead too far ahead, but him and Pacheco are the two where I'm kind of went a little bit overly bullish. And I kind of went to the approach of, there's nothing that I see in the way, and maybe I'm missing something, but they have kind of a clear path, and they did great jobs the last season where I'm gonna. So let me say 2 things, right? One, there's no real serious competition that I see that I'm worried about. 2, they're on arguably 2 of the top 5, 6 most elite teams in the NFL right now for the last 5 years, and projecting for the next 5 years. And so that all holistically is kind of where I'm like, okay, they're younger. They just proved it last year. They both had phenomenal years with their teams. This is where I kind of start to get excited. And specifically on the Bills side for James Cook, there's no one else fucking there. Like, there's just literally no one else there to do anything. Like,
they did draft a running back in the 4th this year, Ray Davis out of, I think, Kentucky. But that just not really threatening him. I don't think 4th running backs threatening, but
in the top 3 rounds, a day 1, day 2 pick, but day 3 pick, I'm not super worried about it. And again, they don't have any depth anymore because they got rid of all their backup running backs. So yeah, it's just a very unique dynamic in Buffalo where it's literally like Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid and James Cook is kind of like the trio that's running it out in Buffalo. So I probably was a little aggressive and bullish on him, but I was trying to think of other players that kind of got me excited, and I wanted also just kind of have some discourse in here. I think James Cook is an interesting one to me. I think he's someone that, again, I would value higher than normal, and I kind of know that. And not that I would personally value him higher than Christian McCaffrey. Now, like, I wouldn't add anything with Christian McCaffrey to James Cook, but Like, so it's also knowing trade value versus like where I'd actually be willing to take a guy. Like,
well, yeah, this is like team construct agnostic because obviously your team's in a situation where you're not willing to take a chance on James Cook right now. But if we were in a startup, you might say, I want the upside of James Cook's career over maybe the point scoring of McCaffrey.
Great example. If I was at whatever the 27th pick and there was James Cook, I'm probably going James Cook.
Right. That's kind of how I try to do this, not based on my team, what I would give up, because I think there are certain players on my team that just mean more to my team than what I could get for them on the market, where I'm like, yeah, of course I could sell this player for this, but like that would leave a huge hole on my team, or it just doesn't make sense, even if that's fair value. Same with like what you're seeing with some of the trades we're trying to make. And I think one thing that is underrated about James Cook, and I have it pulled up, is that did you know that James Cook was 4th in the entire NFL in rushing yards last year, and he was 2nd among running backs, 3rd among all running backs in all-purpose yards, and he finished as like running back 15 or something. So like it was a very sneakily dominant season. He just didn't have the touchdowns.
Yes, I did know that, and I think that was part of my logic for him. But that was what I was looking at. I was actually just looking at like rushing attempts and rushing yards as I was doing this, because I was like, who are the best running backs beyond anything else, not the touchdowns, or like fantasy points. And he was one that obviously was like really high up there. So I was like, all right, I probably shouldn't leave out James Cook. And I started thinking about their team, and it's like Buffalo keeps saying they want to have oh my god, I don't know, I can think of his name. Josh Allen, rush less. I was like, why can't
he's a forgettable guy? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking like in my head, I'm like Jonathan Taylor, and I'm like, that's not right. And so I'm thinking Josh Allen, like they don't want him to run as much. They just finally seems that they have a good running back, which they really haven't had a great running back since Josh Allen's been the quarterback. They've had some decent ones, they've had some okay ones, and so all that is me hoping that they start to actually lean on him a little more. They just don't have as many weapons. I feel like they're going to have to lean on James Cook more. And so I feel optimistic that James Cook can do it kind of based on what he did last year. And again, their team and Josh Allen, like Josh Allen is a winner. He's just going to grind it out. That I'm excited to see what he potentially can become in Buffalo.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up a good point earlier about saying you wouldn't add to McCaffrey to get to James Cook. And I think that kind of goes to make a point about why we're using a tier system rather than a ranking system, is that I think I have James Cook in this tier, even though I don't have him at running back 7. I have him running back 12. I think we would both agree that when it comes to these players in this tier, it becomes almost a preference thing. If you like Pacheco more than James Cook, it's not like a blasphemous thing to say. If you like Saquon more than James Cook, by all means, feel free to trade your James Cook for Saquon. We're not saying, say, just as where James Cook goes based on our rankings, and this means it can't be any lower, or, I think we would say maybe when you're looking at the tier breaks, that's where we would say, yeah, if you really want to go from Travis Etienne to Breece Hall, you probably do need to add something to Etienne to get to Breece Hall. But if you have Etienne and you like Jonathan Taylor better, and the Taylor manager is willing to give you a 3rd on top of Taylor for Etienne, you should probably take it. Like, because they're in the same tier. If I like McCaffrey more than Etienne, and someone offers me McCaffrey for Etienne straight up, I should just take it and not ask for this. The point of the tier is if you can get a plus on top of a guy in the same tier as you, then do it. Otherwise, you don't have to make any strong decisions one way or the other. These players are all very similar. They have similar reasons for being where they are. They might be different ages or different productions or different profiles or different opportunities, but they're all relatively similar in value, at least for us.
And everyone for me in this tier could have a job in 2+ years in the league. Everyone else in this tier none of them could have a job in 2 years in the league. So I agree.
I think that's why they sit below this tier of the next. I think the top 6 we have are pretty strong top 6 of, you got to imagine they're playing this year and they're going to go into the following year as a starter, unless barring injury, or like a complete meltdown somehow. Like I couldn't imagine.
I think the top 6 we have, I would bet that they're all playing in, we're going to start 24, so 25, 6. They're all playing and starting the year as their RB1 in 2026.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. So the next one is also, holy shit, I didn't realize I had this guy so high up. That might have been a mistake. But the next guy on our list is Devon Achane. A huge disconnect between the two of us again. I had him as running back 4, and Dave had him as running back 15. So I'll give you a little bit.
You can't be that high of a running back when you didn't even score the most fantasy points in your own team.
That's
a little
true.
Challenging.
It is just one of those things where you look at something A-Chain did in a very small sample size, but not a ridiculously small. He still got over 100 carries, and he basically broke every single efficiency metric standard in the entire NFL's history. I think he had something like a 8 yards per carry average, and I think he had the most yards created or whatever that. What was the metric I said for ETN earlier? Might have been. Let me look this up. NFL Next Gen Stats. I can't. It's some sort of rushing metric that he was so far and above every other running back on the planet, which just tells me that in the event that the Dolphins ever feel like this guy could be our lead back, he could be a game-breaking 2,000 yard per season running. But no, I'm not saying he's going to do that. His rushing yards over expected. If you go to rushing yards over expected per attempt, the top 10 players, starting with James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, Raheem Mostert, on a per touch basis, averaged 0.4, 0.4, 0.6, 0.6 for Kyron, 0.6 for Brees Hall, 0.7 for Zach Moss. This means every rush, they added an extra 0.6 or 0.7 yards per carry to that rush based on either evading a tackle, seeing something differently. James Conner was 1 full yard. Jalen Warren was 1.1. Christian McCaffrey was 1.3. Devon A-Chain was 2.9 rushing yards over expected, which is just, again, that would come down the more volume he got. But he was the most efficient running back we've ever seen in the NFL to get at least 100 carries. To me, that just, it screams to me that if you're going to ever shoot for upside at a cost that's way below the cost of Bijan, Brees, and Jahmyr Gibbs, this is the guy you do it on. You don't win the league on the backs of a guy like, I don't know, Najee Harris. You win. Actually, I shouldn't say that because Brent won 2 years in a row with Najee Harris. Fuck. But I'm just trying to make the case that he's not the safe play. He's the home. He's not just a home run. He's the 5-run Chinese New Year home run over the backstop around the world, 360 slam dunk alley oop. He's just, of course, he got injured. Small guy, fall down, get hurt. It happens. But I think his upside is just so tremendous that I could not fathom trading him straight up or bypassing on him for some of these safer players. The only players I would ever consider ahead of him are the 6 guys in the tier above him that I think, admittedly, I probably should have had above him the whole time, of Taylor, ETN, and McCaffrey. But it's hard not to have a little homership bias. And I just wanted some friendly discourse. But Dave, tell me why I'm a dumbass and why you had A-Chain at running back 15.
So yeah, he's okay. So the only thing I knew about him coming into the league was he was fragile. He was injured 3 times last year. I think he was injured in training camp.
Yep.
And then he was injured twice in the season.
Yep.
And so for me, and the only thing I'll say that, like, I don't know, he's 22. Like,
right.
I'm going to say my body was different at 18 to 22. I don't know if my body's that different from 22 on. Like, 22 is your body. Like, you can maybe get a little bit bigger, but you're not getting much bigger.
I don't know, Dave. I've seen some pictures of my camera roll of you from like 5 years ago, and you're looking a lot better now.
Dude, I don't know. Maybe looking better, but I'm not, like, you're not going to be crazy bigger.
Shout out Orange Theory
in NFL because of anything like that. So I think that for me is where I just don't think A-Chain's going to change from that standpoint. The question is, can he just ultimately end up staying healthy and be that buy?
Definitely has risk.
Well, is he so amazing because he actually just goes 100%, where a lot of other guys are like, oh, hey, if I do that 100%, I might make this corner or I might get my knee taken out. Like, and he might be like, fuck it, I'm doing it. Or other players are like, I'm going to just run out of bounds so I can come back the next play. Whereas A-Chain's like, nah, I'm either going to make it or I'm not, and I'm going for. I don't know what his mentality is. I literally don't know. But the only thing I knew about him coming in was he was fragile and fast. And he was both very much so last year. And so that's where, to me, I'm hedging, and I would never pay the premium where you are right now. Not to say his upside isn't there, but what the challenge I'd put you at, and the same thing kind of as James Cook, where I valued him. But like, I would never pay for A-Chain at this value. Just like I said,
you're right.
Just like I said, I wouldn't add a McCaffrey to Cook. I wouldn't add McCaffrey to A-Chain because, like, I'm not paying for his ultimate upside. I'm paying for what he is right now. And right now, he had a great first year, but realistically, he also missed a good amount of time. And my concern is that repeatable? And what you just said, right? If he ends up getting a lot of load, the efficiency is going to drop down. How far is it going to drop down? I don't know. Is he more tired? Does he take longer to recover? I don't know. There's other questions there too. But that's sort of to me. Now, if he comes, the only thing I'll say is if he comes back next season, doesn't get injured at all next season, and he's, I don't know, getting 15 points a game, 16 points a game, yeah, I'd probably start putting him right where you have him right now, like running back 7-8 in Dynasty easily, maybe even higher because some of the guys got older. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think you bring up a lot of good points. I think the biggest drawback would be that, I mean, he scored 22 points per game in games that he actually played, not the game that he left after one snap. So in games that he was actually played a full game, I think he averaged like 21 points per game, which is like Christian McCaffrey level points per game. But that is also, let's admit it, call a spade a spade. It's inflated by a 50-point game, a 40-point game. Like, of course, he had some really productive games later in the year. Like I had him in my lineup in the championship game. I think he scored like 18 points, like a great game. Like that's what you can't ask for much more than 50 rushing yards, a couple of receptions, a touchdown. I think he's always a home run threat on every play. The problem is you don't know when I don't think I want him as one of my starters, but I think he's still so valuable. But I'd be nervous having him in my lineup every week, just being like, am I going to get home run A-chain or am I going to get, he's like a shinier Gabe Davis of running backs. I'm just kidding.
That's almost a slap to
that's a slap to A-chain.
Listen, I'm tough on A-chain. That's
I know. I was just kidding. It's just funny to make fun of it because I think somebody in our league loves Gabe Davis. But okay, let's move on to our next running back in our rankings. Less controversial. I don't think we have much to say on this one. Is you had him at running back 10. I had him running back 9, Saquon Barkley. Pretty safe, stable running back. He has had an RB1 overall season. He's had a couple injury-ridden seasons. I think last year he missed several games. 2 years ago, he's coming back from an ankle injury. It was kind of shitty. Then the year before that, he had the ankle injury. The year before that, he had the ACL injury. So he's just really never gotten it going. Been on a really brutal Giants offense that was like bottom 3 in run, bottom 3 graded run blocking line the last 2 years. So it's like there was multiple games where he was the leading rusher, pass catcher, and passer for the game because Tommy fucking Chicken Cutlets had -4 passing yards. So I think Saquon's about as stable as they come. He's probably undervalued here. I think he's probably a player that could be scoring you 18 points per game pretty easily in that Eagles offense, but yet you can get him for maybe a first and a second. Like I think I'd much rather prefer him in a one single season, like we touched on the OTQ. I might prefer Saquon over Cook and A-Chain. Maybe he belongs at the top of this tier, but as far as a dynasty lens is concerned, he is 26. He has been injured. I don't know if I can move him much higher.
27.
Yeah, 27. Yeah. So what do you think? Is there anything I missed or anything you don't want to add to that?
No, I think, okay. Yeah, I think you're spot on. What's funny though is, one guy that we're not going to, I don't want, should I go to a guy we're not going to talk about, but it's very comparable?
We can do honorable mentions at the end, but yeah.
Well, no, he relates kind of well to Barkley as I've looked at just their history.
Okay, yeah. Who is it?
And he's coming off one of his worst seasons, but it's Eckler. Eckler has had better seasons than Saquon ever.
He's not even on the list. He's not even on the list.
No, we didn't put him in our 24, which is.
I'm saying, but he's not even on here. This is like a stock. I'll put him down here. This is Gus Edwards.
So, yeah, but if you look at it, right, he's gone 4-26 with an injury, 2-1-26 with an injury, missing 6 games the first injury, 3 in last year. But you compare that to Saquon. Saquon's had one top 1 year. Okay, hasn't had any other top 5 years. Is that right? Yeah, it's one of the top 5 year in PPR. And otherwise, he basically his last 4 seasons have been 114th, obviously full injured, 30th with missing 3 games, 5th, and even last year he missed 3 games and finished 13th. It's just a weird dynamic where I feel like Saquon is kind of in that same bucket of Henry. Like there's only 2 running backs that I know of that I know the physique of them, and it is Saquon and Henry.
Oh, Dave, you're checking out dudes?
Yeah, well, no, it's like when you put on the broadcast where Saquon's playing, like they zoom into his quads. When you put on a broadcast with Henry, they put Henry
Dave, that's you
shirtless,
doing that. Don't lie.
shredded, and like just hulking with all his muscles everywhere. It's like actually the third one's DK Metcalf. Like those are the only 3 guys that I know their body physique 100%. I can take it away.
Oh, stop. I know
And
you
that's
know
thanks to the
every inch
camera
of
measures.
Tank Dell.
Yeah.
All
And
16 of them.
but I do wonder if that's also like kind of a persuading thing because like so true. In redraft last year, I picked Eckler second overall because of he just came off his number 1 running back season, and it's just this weird thing where he had a bad season, but collectively 3 of the prior 4 years he was a top 5 running back. He had another small injury to start the season. It wasn't like he started off hot. He's now on a new team, just got paid again. It's like not to say you're going to have him in like where we are right now, running back 9, but he's only a year older than Barkley. I don't know. It's with more success than Barkley historically. Yeah. Very bizarre. Very fugazi.
Yeah. I think everyone's just making excuses for Saquon because of injuries, and they're not giving Eckler the same credit. But you could be onto something. Eckler may be a huge, massive buy. All right, let's move on. We got Ken Walker comes in next. You had him 14th overall. I had him 8th. I think this is probably the most straightforward one in my opinion because I just think he's a really good running back. And I think the team has used him as a lead rusher for the last 2 years. I think he's obviously got some holes in his game, but he's just about as stable as they come. And he's still only 23 years old, 23 and a half. So like the reason he's in here for me is because of his youth, not because of his upside. I don't think he has much of when I say not much of an upside, I just mean, I don't think he's putting up 20 points per game season anytime soon, but I think he's going to give you 14 to 17 points per game. Pretty easy, just off volume alone. And I think even though Charbonnet's solid, I don't think he's really threatening Ken Walker's job anytime soon unless he gets hurt.
Seconded.
All right, next we have Josh Jacobs. I think this is just a carbon copy of Saquon. You had him 9th. I had him 13th. What do you have to say? He switched teams to the Green Bay Packers this offseason. You think that was a pro or a con for him? Lateral move? What do you think?
No, I think it's awesome. I think it's crazy that Josh Jacobs is going to be the old guy in the room at 26. But yeah,
that is hilarious.
I think Josh Jacobs has just – I think his frustration before has been not being paid. He's now paid. He's now on a new team. He's the oldest guy in the room. If there's ever a chance for Josh Jacobs to ball out, it's going to be in Green Bay. And it's a place, too, where, I don't know, probably 3 minimum, maybe 4 home games a year. He's going to have to be this, like, standout player because they're not going to be passing the ball a ton because of the weather in Wisconsin. And he's probably going to have another 1 or 2 games. Somewhere else is going to be a cold weather game. So, yeah, I'm really excited for Josh Jacobs, and I think that's why I had him higher than you. I was 9, yeah. In Dynasty, just because I think for me, he's just in such a great place with a lot of up-and-coming talent that I just get really excited about. Up-and-coming talent started to hit a stride for them their last, 6-8 weeks, whatever it was. And now you're bringing Josh Jacobs to add to that mix. They still have A.J. Dillon. I think they even grabbed another guy too. I forget who. But for Josh Jacobs just to be able to run free is exciting.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think the main reason I had him a little bit lower was he had a down year last year. He was not terribly efficient, and he got tons of volume. So it makes you a little worried that somehow the wheels falling off at 26. I doubt it, which is why I still had him in the same tier that you have him. I just had him a few spots lower. I think he had something like the worst yards per carry in the NFL last year.
But he missed 4 games, and his team sucked. Like literally sucked. They fired their coach in the middle of the season. Sucked.
Right. Like they had no reason to defend anything but the run. Like they weren't going to beat him in the air. But he did have a negative rushing yards over expected per attempt, which isn't the end all be all because there's plenty of good running backs on the list of running backs that had negative rushing yards over expected, but it's not a good sign. Let's go to the last player in this tier for us is Isaiah Pacheco. And you talked about him a little bit earlier. You had him at running back 8. I have him at running back 16. Do you want to touch a little bit on, this is one of the bigger disconnects we had.
So, just echoing the same thing I said before. It's a young running back. He just kind of hit his stride last season. I feel like the Chiefs have just been fumbling through running backs trying to find one that works. Pacheco seemed to really work last season. The draft capital concerns me, but to have a young running back on an elite team, if they're not going to,
Dave, we're losing you. You got a little. Is it a connection thing or is it a? I'm not. I can't hear a single thing you're saying. Uh-oh. It says you're muted on my screen. Your headset, your microphone is broke.
are
There we go. Yeah, you're back.
Okay, cool.
Oh,
Yes, no.
yeah, no, I can hear you. Good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll edit that out. All right, so
that might just stay. We'll have to let that go. But yeah, Pacheco, like that starts to me, I'm just excited. I think he just has a ton of potential. Where if he ends up staying there, and just maintains his role for the next 3 to 5 years, I mean, he could be RB12 every season. He could be even higher than that, especially with the Chiefs. If they, and now that they're going to grow and have better wide receivers there too, I mean, I'm just really excited for them to be having Pacheco there in the backfield too.
yeah, I'm probably in the wrong here. I've been still fading him because of his draft capital for 2 full years now. I just refuse to believe a 7th round running back can be anything in the NFL. I've seen it too many times where your James Robinsons, your Darrell Henderson, your some guy who comes out of nowhere, Damian Pierce, does good for a season, and then a team moves on and says, "Well, we're going to get a real running back." But I mean, you watch Pacheco run; he runs angry, like just a furious cartoon character, like kind of like in Yosemite, the Road Runner, where he could run in place and his legs would spin in a circle. He's that furious of a runner. I think he's really good. I'm probably too low on him, but I just refuse to invest in somebody like him over some of the other guys on the list that I think have done more from a PPR standpoint, because I think most of the leagues we play in our PPR, he's not exactly a pass catching running back, and or have the pedigree, and or have the draft capital, and or have the youth, because he's not exactly that. I mean, he's young, but for a 3rd-year running back, he's 25 already. He's not. There are some rookies this year that are 20 years old that would be 22 or 23 in the same spot as him. He's already going to be going to his age 20, turning 26. Probably not until the next offseason. So never mind. But he's not old. He's just not a young guy on his rookie contract, similar to some of the other guys that we've talked about. Like, James Cook, going into the same season. He's a full half a year younger. Okay, so that's our top 12. That's our RB1s. I think the next tier is the most exciting. We're 57 minutes in. Let's just try to get through these next 6 guys. We're going to have a lot to say about them, I think, but I think this is the most important tier because, you had several of these guys in your top 12. I had several of these guys in my top 12. There's a reason. Some of these guys I didn't even have in my top 24. Some of these guys you didn't even have in your top 24. I think this is an exciting tier. Next up, which I'm surprised we're in such agreement about, because a lot of people would have this guy a lot higher in their dynasty rankings based off last year, but Kyren Williams, you have him as running back 11. I had him at running back 15. He was the running back 2, I think, overall in points per game last year, probably running back 5 or 6 overall. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but he was scoring 20 plus points per game. He was an absolute touchdown fiend last year. I think he scored double-digit touchdowns. He was an absolute monster in the receiving game. He got all of the work when he was playing. He was something like an 80% snap share. Talk to me about why you have him at running back 11. What do you think about Kyren?
Dude, this is where it just gets so dicey. Like I don't like any of these motherfuckers.
24 years old.
But hold on. So actually, the funny thing is though, if you go into the season, I would rather trust Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara over Kyren Williams to at least beat him. And then I put Kyren in this weird little bulk group of there's 10 other guys there that any one could be the better running back. I don't know. Kyren was kind of me just trusting what I saw. But I don't know, dude. The draft capital stuff.
You're right. It's it's tough.
He's the guy. He's the guy that I'm probably most worried about. And maybe that's why we're starting this new tier. But I don't know. Kyren, again, he couldn't go back to be running back 4. I don't freaking know. I'm not saying he can't do it. He just did it. It's just really a question of, I don't know. It's just really a question of what the team's thinking and how it can continue to perform. I still don't quite understand how some of these running backs come out and are amazing for 1 year, then all of a sudden they just don't do anything ever again.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. I think it's stuff that I don't understand, like the scheme or the way the offense, or like was their passing game so good that the defense had to respect the pass, which meant the defense had to stuff that I don't notice, or did a guy just have a perfect run style for the way that run blocking line worked, where anyone could have ran for 1,000 yards? I'm not going to pretend I know that stuff, but I do think you said all the things I'm worried about. Not to mention the Rams just spent a 3rd-round pick on Blake Corum for this season. And I think Blake Corum was a fantastic running back, one of the best college rushing backs in NCAA history. Like, just a phenomenal rusher on the ground. He scored something like 30 touchdowns last year. Like, he's not a slouch. We probably should have him higher, but I agree. I think this goes back to what we talked about in the OTQ, which was this tier of players could be really good, probably should be good for this season, but any one of them could be replaced next year, and none of us would be surprised, whether it's midseason or going into next year, whether it's by virtue of production falls off, age, injury, they just draft somebody better. Like, there's just so many ways that these players, you should be concerned about them in one way or another. And that's why I think these guys all fit in the same tier. I would have Pacheco in this tier personally. But I think just looking at the averages, he seemed like he fit better in the other tier. I guess maybe we could move him down, but I'll leave him for now. Or we can move Kyron up. I just think Kyron and Pacheco are very similar archetypes. But next is our first rookie, Jonathan Brooks. I had him at running back 10. You had him at running back 19. I'll talk a little bit. I like Jonathan Brooks a lot. Mostly because he's super young. We've talked about most running backs who come into the league. A lot of these rookies are 22, 23 years old. I don't have Blake Corum on here, do I? Or we didn't rank him. Yeah, I didn't even have Blake Corum on our list. But like, a lot of these running backs are 22 or 23 as rookies. They leave their rookie contract at 26, 27 years old, where nobody wants them anymore. They don't get signed to a big deal. You have the Chase Edmonds type effect, or whoever, a 26-year-old running back gets a 2-year deal for $6 million and does nothing. But Jonathan Brooks is 20. He won't be 21 until the start of the season. He was putting up monster efficiency metrics in college, but in the same breath, he couldn't even beat out Roschon Johnson as the RB2 in the 2022 college season. So maybe I'm a little too high on him. You had him at running back 19. Why so low? Why are you not willing to move him into your top running backs?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really catch a lot of Jonathan Brooks film last season. What team did he play for?
Played for Texas. I didn't really see much of it. I didn't hear about him until he blew out his knee.
I didn't know that Texas was in the NFL. I thought it was the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. There's the Texans. Yeah, I'm not. Listen, again, what did I know about A-Chain? I knew he was fast and fragile. What do I know about Jonathan Brooks? He's injured, and so
coming off an ACL, that's tough.
I'm not jumping that guy up as like, oh shit, I'm gonna put him way up top, and then my dynasty rankings. Like, I am very pessimistic on. To me, when I make the pick, even if it is the most like, say that he was projected normally in a rookie draft, 1 QB at like 12. I don't know. And if I'm the 12th pick and I need a running back, I'm grabbing Jonathan Brooks. Doesn't mean I'm making Jonathan Brooks just like, holy shit, Jonathan Brooks is running back 5, whatever, in Dynasty, because he's young and all sorts of stuff. I'm very much in the camp of prove it to me once, you get a bump. Prove it to me twice, and I'm going to put you in your tier you belong and based on your performance. It's kind of where the camp that I'm. Yeah. It's kind of how I grade players, honestly. And so to me is where Jonathan Brooks, if it was consensus, hey, this guy's elite. If there's one running back to chase, it's Jonathan Brooks, which is kind of what everyone's saying. But everyone's also echoing that with like, but he's coming off an ACL, so we really don't know. But NFL teams liked him, so it should be fine. But we just saw Breece Hall come off an ACL and flew. And then we saw Jameson Williams come off an ACL and like stunk. And so maybe that's, again, two vastly different players. Yeah, two vastly different players. You can't put them in the same bucket. But I just think that for me, like, I'm not I wouldn't feel comfortable buying him at the value that where we're even merging in the middle at. I don't think it's worth it to go. Like what? I don't know who else is in this tier. Can you throw the rest of the tier up?
Yeah. I'll put the rest of the tier. And then I just want to say one more thing about um I want to say one more thing about Jonathan Brooks. But yeah, I'll put the rest of the tier up because this does just highlight how different all of these players are. We're in a startup. You probably are already going in one direction or another when you get to these guys, and you'll clearly know, well, Jonathan Brooks fits my team a lot better than Derrick Henry does, or vice versa. You already have Tyreek Hill on your team. You already have Dak Prescott, if it's a super flex, or if you already have, Devontae or Tyreek, like you're probably also taking Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara because you're saying I'm just going to keep taking the value on these guys that are probably going to finish better for this season, but maybe don't have the type of tread.
Yeah. And you're right. It's about longevity in some situations too. Yeah. So like, but on all those players, right? And Trey Benson, another rookie. I think if there's it's tough for me to want to take them over any of the guys you're showing there. And I do not like Rashad. Like I don't know. I think Rachaad White has the most fragile job on the planet. And they just took another running back this season, this draft class too. Like I don't know. It's very challenging for me to do that. And I think that it's also maybe it's partial to my ownership bias where I'm in a win now team versus a rebuild. And so I'm seeing it as like, oh, well, I would not want Jonathan Brooks over Alvin Kamara. That doesn't make any sense. Or Kyron Williams. I'd much rather have them. And that's kind of that thing here where it's just that weird break of I could even see you say where you're going to bump Kyron up. You move Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson down a tier. And then you have that other small mini tier of like Rachaad White, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. Because like White's still kind of young. Maybe he becomes good. If it's a pass catching back. Henry, Kamara, old. They're just going to fade out eventually, but still perform in top 12 range. And then these other two guys like, hey, okay, this year, this is where they're at. But next year, they might go higher. So, and that's more of me, just how I've been rating dynasty players. And I know just from hearing other podcasts or seeing other rankings, so many other people kind of give them ceiling value before they played it down. And that's just like even Marvin Harrison, you hear everyone just scrambling like, oh, Marvin Harrison, he's like already my wide receiver 4. And it's like the dude hasn't played it down. That is just, and it's like, there's just so many factors. And the funny thing is you would have thought a lot of people would have learned this from Bijan last year, where everyone was like, Bijan is going to be, if he's not CMC, it's going to be Bijan number 1 coming in.
Yeah.
But that's I felt such FOMO on Bijan. I was like, Max, what is it going to take to get Bijan?
Yeah.
So it's weird that we just had that season proving where scheme, coaching, competition, like there's so many factors to why you might not be getting that playing time and perform. To just all of a sudden put them at ceiling and ranking, it's like, let's see how 1 year goes. Like, because if that just dynamic is not there, especially for wide receiver, a little bit less at running back, but if the mechanics are not there, like all those things are so challenging. And you're seeing it here with running back too, where we talked about kind of my OTQ was so many places are going committee wise for whatever reason, preventing injury or fresher legs and fresher, energy levels in the middle of the game. So you're not like tired in the middle of a sprint on the field. So I don't know. That's where for me, I just end up, I think, ranking them lower if I was to rank a dynasty ranking, even though paper says and everyone else consensus wise majority says like, nah, they're way higher, buddy. You're an idiot.
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of good points, especially because I think it goes back to our OTQ around like how can you really depend on any, like you said with Rachaad White, like who's more likely to lose their job mid-season? Like Henry or White? Probably White, but also who's more likely to be playing 3 years from now? If all things go right, probably White. So it's like that risk reward you have to navigate between. If you are I need to win this season, it probably doesn't make sense for you to flip Henry for White. You're going to lose some production potentially. I mean, again, potentially. White did finish as running back 4 or 5 last year, so I'm not saying that it's technically a downgrade, but I would agree with you. I think Henry's going to outscore White this year just because that Ravens offense is so good. But that doesn't mean that you should necessarily value some guy for one season higher, although we made the point that with running backs, sometimes that might be the smarter play. I do think one thing is I had Brooks in this tier with Saquon, White, Cook, Jacobs, and Ken Walker because among those guys, he is a full 3 years younger than the next youngest player in that tier of Ken Walker, and then a full 4 years younger than the next closest of James Cook. So, if anything, I'm banking on he was the first running back taken in the league, a second round pick, which is the only running back taken in the second. To me, that gives him at least I'm willing to bet on that profile because if you want the next ETN, Jonathan Taylor, potentially Brees Hall, you have to spend a little bit more than you're comfortable with, which I think, we could mock the Turtles all we want. I think if I had the 105 personally, I think I would have taken Brooks there just because of my team construction, not because I think he's the fifth best player in the draft. I think I had Brian Thomas and Brock Bowers were my 4 and 5. But that being said, based on my team construction, saying, hey, I have a kind of a fragile running back room with Gibbs is a small boy, A-Chain's a small boy. ETN's already had one season-ending injury. I really would have benefited from adding another running back there rather than adding a wide receiver 6. But you have to kind of if Brooks does turn into the next Brees Hall, this is the cheapest you're ever going to get that price. Like right now, you could buy Brooks for probably, a first and 2 seconds. I tried buying the 105 for a first and second, and Austin rejected it. But so I would say it's got to spend more than that. But if you want to buy obviously Brees Hall or Jonathan Taylor or Travis Etienne or Christian McCaffrey with just picks, you got to spend more than 2 firsts, random firsts. So that's the only reason why I had him so high was you're banking in upside. Of course, like you said, if you haven't proven to me before, then I'm not going to spend up on you, which is a fine philosophy, especially with this position that's so fragile. But if you want to go chase that upside, you have to be willing to spend the equivalent of a mid first in one QB. So going to our next guy, Rachaad White. Polarizing player, not just between me and you. A lot of people are either super high on White or super low on White. And I'll explain to you why I'm very high on him. I always have been. I loved his prospect profile. I don't have the tweet, but some guy pulled together a Rachaad White thread and was just basically saying from a team target share basis in college and a yards per route run basis and all these crazy efficiency running back metrics, he is the best receiving running back since Christian McCaffrey as far as prospect running backs go. He was phenomenal. And in a PPR league, I said to myself, that's all I care about. Like, I don't care if he's a really fantastic runner. Of course, that's a bonus. That's when you get guys like Brees Hall at the top and guys like Jahmyr Gibbs. That's the jack of all trades, the guy. But we're already in a tier where all these guys have warts. So, Rachaad White had finished as the RB4 last year. He had 75 receptions. And I think we'd all agree he kind of sucked ass on the ground. And yet he still put up an RB4 overall season. It just goes to show he has such a safe floor. And you say they drafted another running back, but so did half the league draft another running back at least after round 4. Like I'll give a list right here of other teams with good running backs on this list that drafted a running back in round 3 or 4 this year. The Jets drafted Braylon Allen in the 4th. They have Brees Hall. The Packers drafted Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd. They have Josh Jacobs. The Rams drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd. They have Kyron. The Dolphins drafted Jalen Wright in the 4th. They have A-Chain. The Ravens drafted Rasheen Ali in the 5th. They have Henry. The Eagles drafted Will Shipley in the 4th. They have Saquon. The 49ers, Isaac Guerrero in the 4th. The Bucks drafted Bucky Irving in the 4th. The Bills drafted Ray Davis in the 4th. It's the theme of I'm just not that threatened by day 3 running backs. I'm not saying that's not a potential threat because I think Bucky Irving's a fine running back, but I think Rachaad White proved that he can be that pass catcher. And if anything, kind of like you said with Christian McCaffrey having a long career because he's a receiver and not just a rusher, I think Rachaad White is Christian McCaffrey light, budget Christian McCaffrey. Of course, he's not going to be scoring 24 points a game, but I could see him playing for another 5-6 years as just he's in there. He gets you your 4 to 6 targets a game. Sometimes he explodes for 9, and he's not going to run for a ton. But the Bucks are another team that
sounds
had
like he's your budget Austin Eckler.
Yeah, he gives. I actually don't think he's even as good as running back as Austin Eckler. I think he's just a pure receiving back that's phenomenal. And I think with a better offensive line, he could put up some better efficiency metrics on the ground. But I'm not banking on it. I'd be paying for his receiving upside. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why Rachaad sucks.
I don't. It's just there's a lot of things. I think I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive here, but I don't know how hard it is to find a pass catching back. It seems like there's a lot more of them now than there ever was prior. Mm-hmm. And so sure, it's good to be one of the best ones coming out of college, but You still got to produce what your team needs. And if he gave the Bucks what they needed for the last 2 seasons, and that's what they want, then I'm not going to say that he's going to lose his job. The feeling has been that the way that they've used him, it seems that they might have figured it out last season. So that's why I kind of give him some grace that maybe he has kind of solidified his spot. He's just in this weird flux spot where last season was kind of the surprise. And again, I'll bump you up for your first year of like true peak performance. Do it a second time, and I'm locking you in. And so if he can do it again, he doesn't lose touches, and he's looking great, then fine. Whether you suck at it as a running back based on running back metrics, but you're getting all these points through catching, great. To your point, like that's a W.
It just might be too late to buy him at that point, which is like, oh, do it 2 years, then I'll buy you. And like you said, you admitted that then I'm willing to pay extra to get you once you prove it to me twice, which is kind of like what you said in a different episode about, I might have waited too long on a guy like Tank Dell, but I was willing to wait and see and spend a little extra than actually draft him in my draft ahead of consensus. I'll wait and see if he does what I want. And then I'll spend a first instead of drafting him in the second.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not even so much Mars more meant of a ranking, but yeah, 100%. Like, I think, gosh, it's just like, I actually don't know which one I'd bet more on, Kyron or Rashad to be a running back in 3 years. I don't know. Like they're literally the same. They're so different situations, but they're the same. If I actually had to bet one, I'd bet on Kyron, even though his draft capital sucked. Like the way he performed, I'd put on Kyron. But like, it's such a toss up.
I think Rashad has a safer floor in terms of I think he'll have a job. I couldn't see him completely being out of a job because he's so good in the pass game. Whereas I think Kyron has the better chance of still being a bell cow. And I think that you could very easily see Rachaad White get replaced as the lead back next year and still retain a role. But we've talked way too much about Rachaad White. Let's go on to Derrick Henry. King Henry. You had him at running back 12. I had him unranked, which was where he deserved to be. No, talk to me about Derrick Henry, because I think you've already made some really good points about older running backs and you have him as your top 12. And
did you have Kamara ranked or no?
I had Kamara at running back 24.
You actually okay? So he actually was ranked 24. Henry was not ranked.
Henry was unranked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of
wrong. I should not have Zach Charbonnet ahead of Derrick Henry. That's just
it's okay.
Bad on my part. That's just homership bias.
No, at least you're seeing. Hey, first point is admitting it. Yeah, I think this is where maybe this also would have been a good OTQ, like for a ranking show. But yeah, at what point do you just say, okay, I think Henry, and I'd assume consensus is Henry is going to be a top 12 back with the Ravens, given they now have two great tight ends. They have an elite rushing QB. They have good receivers around him too, but they now have this two-headed problem. Like, there's just going to be so much field to play with because they can't guard everything.
I mean, he's got some tough shoes to fill with Gus Edwards, but I think he'll do a decent enough job replacing. I mean, he's probably going to give you 80% of what Gus Edwards gives you, right?
Hopefully, he can be out Keaton Mitchell, and then if he does, then I think we got a real shot at being a great running back there. But yeah, so I think that's kind of that question mark of like, they're going to perform. It's almost a CMC effect of like, okay, he's redraft number 1. You're not going to make him the number 1 dynasty running back, but where do you draw that line of like, all right, he's going to be potentially the best running back this season. You can't have him that far skewed below if he's still going to give you the best RB projected, best RB performance of the season. Like, that still has so much value in dynasty. And so that's kind of where for Henry, for me, is, and maybe I'm a little bit higher than what he probably should be in dynasty. He maybe should be in the 15 to 18 range instead of the 12 range.
He comes in at our consensus 16, which is probably, like we said, like, if I should be higher, you should be a little lower, and it should be in that 12 to 18 range.
And that's kind of okay, but like him and Kamara are both, just to hit them both. They're both in that range where Kamara came back after kind of the suspension, where there's a lot of just smoke and a lot of concerns about him actually going to play. Just stunting. Like, he's just still so fucking good. So is Henry. And Henry last season has the running back rushing leader again. Yeah, and no one even fucking cared. Like, that's the great
like, we still don't care.
Everyone cares about who had the most wide receiver yards or who had the most passing yards. No one fucking gave a shit who had the most rushing yards. Like, who had the most rushing fantasy points. It's all that one gave a shit about. But that's why I joked, like, most of the rushing back fantasy points are from catches in PPR.
Yeah.
And so it's just that weird dynamic. But yeah, I think like though both those guys are just such like anomalies where I would bet a lot that pending injury, they're both going to be top 12 running backs this season. And
Yeah.
if they do it this season, I don't know why they couldn't still do it next season. It depends on where they finished. If they both finish like 11 and 12, okay, I'd probably bet closer 15 and 18. If they finish 5 and 7, I'm going to bet they're top 12 again. So it's kind of like I'm going to give them every year wherever they finish. I'm going to drop them, and if I had to bet 6 to 10 ranking, I guess, like on a pure season basis, I would drop them 6 to 10 spots if I was to project out. And then if they keep proving me wrong, I'm going to keep, that's where I'm projecting them the year after. If I can draft them there or whatever, like that sounds awesome. And so that's what, to me, like they just performed so well in their games last year. It's hard to just be like, you know.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I know we've reiterated it a bunch, but I think you made such good points earlier. It's like, if every running back in these tiers, excluding the rookies, but like Kyron, Rashad, Henry, Kamara, maybe you could include Pacheco, maybe you could include guys like Jerome Ford, DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Zamir White, Najee. Every single one of those running backs is in jeopardy of not being a running back next year, including Henry and Kamara. Why would you not just, at that point, then you can't use youth as an argument for those guys when their job security is the same as Henry, even though Henry's is more because of age. Rashad White's could be because of production, or, you know, Trey Benson could be because he just never is any good. It's like, why would we? Maybe we are being too harsh on age, and I think maybe it just requires a little bit of rethinking about it. Saying all the same arguments for Kamara. I don't have much to say. So I think
that was actually, you just made it a phenomenal point. I think that's exactly it, because we just said all that tier above. I would say that, you know, all of them are questionable to be running backs in 3 years. This tier is all these running backs are questionable to be running backs in 2 years.
Right.
And so I think you're right. Like that is probably the best way to view it, is like who has, and probably those top 3, you know, and I think I'd Taylor, but the top 3 are 4+ years. The second tier is like, they're going to be there in 3, or they're going to be there beyond 3. And then it kind of goes to, you know, 3,
yeah,
2,
no, it's a really good way of putting it too. And like, we don't even know, like you said, Brooks and Benson could be zeros. Obviously, you have to pay to you have to buy a ticket to see. You can't just sit on the outside and pick them up off waivers. So like, that's why they're here, because of their age. But like you said,
I
these
do
guys
with
are all,
Kyron. I'm just gonna pick up Kyron this year, dude.
but yeah, I think same thing for Kamara. I think Kamara was a top 5 running back last year on a points per game basis. He was suspended for the first 3 games, so that's kind of why I think, you know, he belongs right next to Henry in terms of Henry finished the year as running back 9, and Kamara finished running back 5 points per game. So it's like they're very similar archetype in terms of just their age versus production. Even though Kamara's a year and a half younger.
Kamara's only played 1 full season, and he's never finished worse than RB16 on the season total. That's insane. And if you ignore the 16 and then last season where he's suspended, it's never finished worse than RB9 in the first 5 or 6. Like he is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we got the next one with Jonathan Brooks. Probably not, but maybe it's Rashad White's the next one. Nah. Anyways, okay, the last running back in this tier, and the last one we're going to talk about is Trey Benson. I had him as a running back. Trey Benson. I had him as running back 14. You had him as running back 24. Fucking Trey Benson, pride of FSU.
I don't know who he is.
He got drafted by the Cardinals in the 3rd round. Second running back taken.
Let me go watch a video on him.
He was fine running back. I don't think he's, as a prospect, he's similar to your caliber player as like Condre Miller or like Dajay Spears or Zach Charbonnet. Like nothing, like not bad. He's just not fantastic. I don't think he's worth spending up for. But again, he has an opportunity. He's got an older running back in front of him. He could be this year's A-Chain. He could be this year's Charbonnet. So we don't know. But I think you have to pay to see. So I think because he's only 21 years old, I have him ahead of a lot of the other murkier 1-year running backs. But like we just said, this guy could play for 1 year, and then the Cardinals could go out and spend a top pick on, you know, Trevor Etienne or fucking Trevion Henderson or whoever the next, Quinshon Judkins, the big running backs from next year's class.
This guy is terrible. I've watched his first 2 highlights. This guy just gets caught from behind. He has a huge hole from his O-line, then he just gets tackled.
Damn. All right. Should I move him down to Wolf?
I mean,
he needs an injury to be relevant.
Huge hole. Okay. Breakout. Okay, he only didn't get tackled there because the D was at the goal line. But like, all right, good job, Trey Benson.
He was just the second rookie running back taken, which is why I had him higher up, not necessarily in my top
Yeah, but like,
12. Yeah, I just think you had to pay to see, so I had him ahead of older running backs or really unproven guys, like,
I mean,
guys who had way less draft capital.
This replayed the same play. That's how impressive that touchdown run was of like 10 yards. I mean, this is the ACC's Digital Network's YouTube channel showing his highlights.
Damn.
All
All
he
right,
bounced off and get a 3-yard touchdown. That's impressive.
All right, let's move him out then. So we have a top 17 and then Trey Benson.
Oh my God, they replayed that one too, dude.
All right, we're coming up on an hour and a half. I'm going to just throw the rest of the guys in here for you guys to see if you're watching on YouTube based on our rankings, but we really weren't aligned on any of these guys going forward. One of the guys isn't even on this list. Jerome Ford was next. Dave had him at RB16. I had him RB24. Next after that was Javonte Williams. I had him RB17. Dave had him as RB24. After that was DeAndre Swift at 23 and 19. Zamir White, who's not on this list either. Like, just Najee Harris came in after that. Ramondre Stevenson. Just overall, a lot of these guys are, I mean, they're just, this is not a good name, but just like meh.
Will there be a running back in 1 year after this year?
Will they even make it through this year as a running back is the better question. And there's no certainty beyond this season that they're going to have a job. So that's why these guys are, if you can get these guys for a single second, I would do it. But I'm not willing to pay up for any of these guys right now. These are the types of guys I want to wait and see. I'm buying on, week 2 or week 3. If I suffer an injury to one of my running backs and I got to worry about bye weeks, these are the guys that if they have a role and it's not, obviously, if they're smashing for 20 points a game, you're not getting them cheap. But if they're scoring you 8 to 12 points a game, getting 4 or 5 targets, type of guy I might kick the tires on and say, hey, what's it going to take for me to get DeAndre Swift? Can I give you my injured running back for DeAndre Swift in a first? Or can I give you my backup running back in a second for Najee? Can I give you Zach Charbonnet in a second for Najee? Like something like that where you got to get creative to try to fill in the gaps on your team. That's where all these guys come in. I think the rest of them, there's just nobody else worth talking about here. That's not on. So, I mean, Tony Pollard's on here.
I'm so watching Trey Benson. He almost got caught by 3 different Virginia Tech players, and then he celebrated the end zone like he fucking just beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, that's it for today's show. Our rookie draft is ongoing right now. We're almost through round 1, I think. We're moving slower than last year's, but we've had a lot of trade discussions, that's for sure. I've been a part of a lot of the trade talks. I know Dave has too. Next week we're going to be going through wide receiver rankings again. We should have a lot of disconnects again, but this was fun to go through, Dave. Thanks for taking some time to put your rankings together. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's been great. Go old guys, and yeah, for all the people listening that are in the league, know your value of your players and stop fucking thinking they're worth so much.
Peace.